Oh, hey there. Today I'm going to be swapping out my worms. They have, oh, this tote's full of worm castings at this point, and it's time to harvest them. So what I'm going to be doing, the top layer I have in here is just wet leaves, and I have not fed these worms for probably a couple of weeks, so a lot of them are already going to be in this wet leaf layer. I'm just going to put that in a bin here. These worms do a fantastic job for me. I've already gotten, in the last year, 40 or 50 gallons worth of worm castings from these guys. And it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's very little work involved. You just got to take care of them. And they're easier to take care of than a Cocker Spaniel. So, not that they're pets or anything. But, so there. So I got that top layer off. Now what I'm going to do, put this to the side. We'll use that later. Now what I'm going to do is take this bin. This bin has holes in it. And I'm going to transfer this bin into this bin. Let's set that there. And I'm going to get all this stuff out of here and put it in there. I'll just do it by hand. I don't like using tools on the worms. Yeah, this has been cooking since, I don't know. Well, this is February. Probably, I last harvested these in November. Something like that. Out of this bin. As you can see, there's still some leaves and stuff in there, but primarily it's just all worm castings in here. I'll probably get a 5-gallon bucket out of this guy. There's a lot of ways to separate worms from the castings. You can shine a light on them, keep scraping the top off. That works. I've done that before. But this is kind of really a lazy way to do it. There, that's good enough. And you still end up with some worms, but not a whole bunch. So, but this is the way I like to do it. It seems to be the easiest. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this bed up for the worms. All right, and these guys will migrate down from this bin into this bin. This bin's going to go on top of here. So, come on, buddy, get in there. So, and then the idea is that this will be finished. Worm castings up here, and then all the worms will have migrated down into here. So, anyhow, what I'm going to do is take this wet stuff. Oh wait, I'm going to put some dry leaves in first. Dry leaves, because I'm going to be feeding them. When I feed the worms, I blend it in the blender, so it's pretty wet stuff. You don't have to. I just get more worm castings that way. In the summer I don't so much, but in the winter. So there's some dry leaves. I'm going to dump this stuff in there. And the leaves, I shred them up. If you don't shred them, then they get matted. So there's that. this out here. Now I'm going to put some wet leaves in there. These I had soaking overnight. The food that I made them this morning isn't that wet, so I just like to put a little dry leaves at the bottom when I start up a bed. Now if I was using newspaper, I'd be doing things a bit differently. But seeing that I'm using the leaves and everything, there's a lot of good stuff in there already. But what I mean by if I was using newspaper, I'd be putting native soil in there. But just for the heck of it, I got a cup of finished compost. Just sprinkle some of that in there. It doesn't need it because they got all this stuff from here and going into there. If this was a new worm bed, I'd put a lot more compost in here and native soil. And then I'm going to give them a little bit of, well actually, I'm going to feed them. And this went through a food blender, processor, whatever. And it's just all sorts of goodies from the garden last year. I froze, kept in the freezer. There's broccoli, comfrey, carrot tops, what else was in there? All sorts of goodies. And then of course bananas that we continue to eat, and banana peels, and coffee grounds of course, and throw those away. So I'm going to give them a very generous feeding here. I usually don't feed this much when I feed them. But seeing that this is going to be kind of buried, I'm not too worried about critters laying eggs on it or anything like that. So that's a real generous buffet for these guys. There. Yeah, it's good. Alrighty. Now I'm going to sprinkle some eggshells, pulverized eggshells. They get plenty of this, but when I do a heavy feeding like this, I like to give them a little more. Because worms, they don't have teeth. Any particles that they ingest that have to be ground up, they have a gizzard similar to a chicken. So they need some kind of coarse material to grind things up a bit. Alright, now I'm going to cover that with just a very light coating of wet leaves again. Not a lot, I just don't want all the food to get into the holes and everything in the top bin. Just a light sprinkle dinkle, something like that. I tend to keep my worms on the dry side. A lot of people, I'll see videos and their worm bedding is soaking wet. One university, I think the University of Illinois, said they should have like 70% moisture. I probably run mine around between 50 and 60, I guess, I don't know. I've never really checked it out, but anyhow, so now they're ready. I'm just going to, well actually, before I do that, and just set these guys in here. And those holes will communicate with that dressing of the wet leaves. And they will migrate down into the food because they're hungry worms. this point. Spread that out a bit. And I'll just let this sit, and I'll just check it in about a week. You know, and then you can, you know, if you can still scrape off castings off the top if you needed them right away. But that's about it. And I don't want this top layer to, well, I guess it could dry a little bit. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to cover it with the cardboard. If I put some wet newspaper, I mean some shredded wet leaves in here like I normally do, a bunch of them would stay in it. This way, this is going to get kind of dry. They got all the moisture they need in this lower bin. Typically this takes about a couple weeks, but I don't have to do anything. I don't have to mess around with lights and feeding them over here and feeding them over there and putting in cans with holes in it and all that nonsense. This is my lazy way of separating these out. So there you have it. And I'm sure other people do it this way, or maybe not, but that's the way I do it. So thanks for, ow, I got bad knees. Taking a peek.